The biggest challenge you will face is when your spouse doesn't agree with your approach to toxic screen use. Let's say you've been convinced, you've seen the research, you've seen these videos, you recognize the problem and the effects on your children, and you want to prevent it or at least make a change. But your spouse isn't on board. Maybe she's intellectually on board, and when the moment comes, she caves and gives in to the children. It's probably a pattern. It's probably not reduced or limited to just the screen issue. So it actually provides an opportunity to address other aspects of parenting. But the question here is, what do you do? How do you get alignment with your spouse? That's what this video is about. I'm Dr. Johann, clinical psychologist, speaking on this for 7-8 years. And here you're going to learn how to get your spouse aligned with your vision of screen use. Children aren't stupid. They're very clever. They know that when one parent says something that they don't like, they can just go to the other parent. It's the oldest trick in the book. We've all done it as children. And it's never more effective than when it comes to screen time. If they sense there's a crack in the wall of your parental unity, they will exploit it like water eating through a crack in a rock until it becomes a chasm. Children are watching how you and your spouse make decisions together. Are you respectful to each other? Are you united? Do you hold boundaries together consistently? This is opposed to undermining each other, arguing in front of the kids, or one spouse caving in a moment of weakness. So in fact, being on the same page in this issue will also teach your children a wholesome view of marriage, authority, and unity. Keep in mind, we're not just talking about what color to paint Susie's bedroom. We're talking about lifelong addiction, pornography exposure, your child's brain development, depression, anxiety, your child's childhood itself. In other words, you can't afford to be divided on this. So what do you do if you and your spouse are not united? Let's walk through a few scenarios. First scenario is you are intellectually convinced that this is the right thing to do. Your spouse is not. You understand the dangers. You're ready to ban toxic screen use. How do you convince your spouse? So first question to ask here is, how did you yourself get convinced? It probably didn't happen overnight. Maybe it happened because you listened to one of these videos, or you heard a talk, or you read The Anxious Generation or something else. So you have to ask yourself, did your spouse go through that process as well? If he or she did not, then start by introducing them to those ideas. It's often easier for the persuasion to come from an outside third party than to come from yourself. They know you too well, at this point, maybe they'll be a little skeptical. But if you say, hey, let's watch this presentation together, or let's read this book together, let's read Dr. D'Souza's 4 Critical Moments guide, which is in the comments below. Let's read that together because it's pretty straightforward and perhaps even alarmist. So that way you can get your spouse's unfiltered view on it, because they're not disagreeing with you. They're not arguing against you. They're disagreeing with, arguing with, debating this third party that you are looking at together. And then you can hear what they really believe, and you can start to talk through it together. You can understand where the disagreement lies. And then they're also going to be exposed to good information, et cetera, that may be able to convince them. So that's scenario one, where there's an intellectual disagreement between the spouses. What if the challenge is not a disagreement in principle, but the follow through? So I think this is more on the emotional level. Both spouses agree on the screen policy in principle, but in the heat of battle, in the moment, one of them caves. Maybe the dad, in a moment of weakness, he thinks it's going to be easier. It's not a big deal to give in this moment. Maybe mom, anxious, empathetic, wants their child to feel good, hates to see her child suffer. So she gives in a little bit. What do we do in this situation? Usually scenario 2 happens because one spouse is more emotionally sensitive. Almost always it's the woman, not always. Sometimes it's the man. I've seen that happen. In this moment, the other spouse has to be the strong support. Each spouse has a strength in this relationship. The emotionally sensitive person is a better nurturer. That's very important, especially when the children are young. The other spouse is the strength, is the commander. So that person, I'm going to assume it's the man, but not always, he has to be stronger, firm, support the other person in their moment of trial. It's okay if the wife is anxious. That's okay. That's not a problem. If the man is strong, he can support both of them and support the children. We can do this together, even though it's difficult. There are some cases when perhaps professional help is needed, if there's a long history of anxiety and it's affecting other areas of life. That does happen. I have seen that. Most of the time it's not the case. But in those moments, it's helpful to realize we know what works. cognitive behavior therapy is very effective. It's going to help you not with your anxiety, but with other areas of your life too. And it's worth the investment because it's not just this issue, but it's affecting other issues, including your own personal well-being. Scenario 3 is where spouses generally agree and generally enforce consistently, but there's some disagreement on details. Maybe it's frequency of watching things, or maybe it's how often kids are allowed to watch things, or when they do watch things, how long they can watch them for, or what are the circumstances? Does homework have to be done first or not? Or what content are we willing to show our children, and what content do we want to protect them from? So here, I think it's a matter of starting with a clear conversation with the spouse. Let's each get our ideas out, maybe even starting it on paper and then switching and comparing. And let's just get very clear about what our expectations are. And then start by establishing common ground. That common ground, now we can be consistent with that. And then after that, what are the areas where we don't quite agree, but we think we can come to some sort of agreement? Go for the low-hanging fruit, go for the places where it's more likely for you to agree, and understand your spouse's reasons for disagreeing. Because maybe you can come to an agreement because maybe the argument is not substantially based on the screen time itself, but on another factor. For example, maybe mom just wants to have a sensation of being more free to cook without worrying about what the children are doing. And then dad can provide some solutions. And maybe one of the solutions is just being more comfortable with letting the kids play outside unsupervised, which is another thing I recommend. Always start with understanding the other spouse's position, acknowledging their position, even verbalizing it, and even saying why you see it makes sense from their perspective. And then providing your perspective and then dialoguing about it, being willing to admit that you may be wrong. So in doing this, you're not only helping your children by saving them from toxic screens, but you're strengthening your own marriage. Sometimes despite your best efforts, spouses disagree. What do you do then? Depends if you're the father or the mother. If you're the father, acknowledge your role as head of the household. If you're not used to doing this, then this is going to be a process. It's going to take time and probably shouldn't be done all at once. But the main message, at least in this context, is very simple. Look, I have decided that this is what's best for our family, and I must do what is best for our family. Therefore, from now on, we will do X. And then you follow through. Pick something that you do actually feel confident consistently following through on, because this is also going to be a litmus test to whether you're serious about your commitments in the future. If you're the wife and your husband's being weak in this area, I'm sorry, you can't force him to lead. Hopefully you can convert him over time. Pray for him. Share good resources with him. If you can find one of his friends who's convinced of this, and have that guy work on your husband, that you probably stand a much better shot. Control what you can control. Protect your children as much as you can within your sphere of influence. If you have come to agreement, let your children know. Call a family meeting. Kids, this is what we have decided together. From now on, we are going to do this. I have often had parents attend my talks in which one of the spouses is on board and one of them isn't, at least at the beginning of the talk. And by the end of it, they're both on board. I love that. That makes me very happy to see. So if you want this talk for your community, if you want to get your spouse aligned, feel free to reach out to me. You can see the link in the comments below, and it's also where you're going to get the free guide that can help your spouse. You can read it together. I'm Dr. Johann D'Souza. Feel free to reach out. I'm always happy to hear from you guys. Take care.